So my very first Olympic trials, I was 16 and a half. So I actually was pretty young, but I had only been doing elite gymnastics for 1 year. So I didn't start
Oh,
gymnastics till I was 12. Okay, I was 12 when I walked into a gym for the very first time.
hello, beautiful people, and welcome to season 2 of Flipping Out with Bridget Sloan, the Olympic special. I am your host, Bridget Sloan, and I will be joined every episode this season by the one, the only, the legend herself, Miss Kathy Johnson Clark. We will be talking all things elite gymnastics, everything that leads up to the Olympics and during. And for today's episode, we are getting a little personal because we are going to be going in depth about our experiences leading up to our Olympic Games and what those mental and physical struggles might have looked like. Let's get into it. Miss Kathy Johnson Clark, we are back for another amazing episode. We have a lot to talk about today, and I think today's episode will hopefully give the listeners a little inside kind of peek at what our experiences were like leading up to Olympic trials. I think, we were talking about this earlier, the weeks leading up. So when you know that you've qualified for Olympic trials, like you've solidified that spot, you're going. Those couple weeks or that amount of time from finding out you're going into going are important. I mean, I don't want to say they're the most crucial, but it's a very important time as an athlete, as a coach to really hone in on everything.
Yeah. It's kind of like a reset. We finished the last podcast and I
Mhm.
channeled Suni, and the thrill and the excitement that she just put out there so freely and so beautifully and emotionally, just the excitement of being going to the Olympic trials. We're going to the
Mhm.
Olympic trials, and everybody's excited.
Mhm.
Everybody's celebrating because that accomplishment right there by itself, being an Olympic trials competitor, is something that will belong to them. It is theirs for the rest of their lives. That will stick with them. It is such a huge achievement. So, hurrah, congratulations. And now it's reset, because
Right.
this time period in between making the trials, and they built to that level of where the routines were finally coming together. They were comfortable with their upgrades, their stamina, their competitive consistency is getting up there. Well, now you said the word hone. They have to go through every piece of
Mhm.
every routine to find those little tenths of a point that they can save, or find those strong mental cues that they
Mhm.
can focus on, because now they know what that pressure feels like. So we
Right.
saw some of the nervous mistakes because you could tell when nerves would start to creep up. Well, they have to figure that out, because the only way you can do every trick in the book in training to try and recreate that kind of stress.
Well, Kathy, going back to what you were saying though is we're honing in on the detail. We all love the detail, but I feel like you really love honing in on the detail, but that is really these weeks leading up to trials is just it's maximizing your performance,
Mhm.
maximizing your recovery, and just maximizing the success that's possible.
Yes. And trying to find how to calm your mind,
Mhm.
while your body is functioning at the highest level, because they should be reaching that at this point where their physical preparation is at its highest. I know some of the gymnasts are still sort of working around some little things. I know Suni is still on that climb, so they're on a little bit different path. But everybody who's ever competed in the Olympic trials, you've done it twice, I've done it 3 times, and every one of them have been different. So they have to balance all of those different things, different dynamics that they're dealing with
Mhm.
right now. But in terms of finding those strong cues to be able to handle pressure, that intense
Mhm.
pressure that's in the moment, because let's just put it out there. Trials are a different kind of pressure. I would
100%.
rather compete in 3 Olympic finals
For
than
sure.
an Olympic trials, because no matter what you do in your brain, no matter how well you've prepared, there's that little added little thing that you have to do something with. Okay.
Right.
The thing you need to do is use it
Yeah.
positively. Don't act like it doesn't exist because it's going to
Right.
sneak up and go, remember me? Like right in the middle of your beam routine. It's because it feels like a do or die thing. So, and it's not. And we know that this is just gymnastics, but it's a dream that these women and men have had for so long. So
Mhm.
they're practicing that. Many of the gymnasts that are coming into these trials has that experience. That's what's really cool. We've got a lot of
Yeah.
experience at these trials. Athletes who have not just competed at Olympic Games and World Championships and won medals, they actually went through COVID, and some of them competed in Tokyo in an Olympic Games that I was stressed watching them on the other side of the world. Through the television, you could hear the silence in the
Mhm.
arena. I was like, oh my God, you could probably hear yourself breathing
Oh,
instead of think about
the
it.
worst. That is the worst.
Nobody's in the audience. Your
Yeah.
coaches can't even be right there. They're like, some of them are sitting up in the stands and they're not supposed to be yelling or cheering. So it's just like silence that you have to deal with. So
Yeah.
they come in with just layers and layers of experience, and superpowers that we just don't even realize, and that they probably didn't realize they had until they tapped into them. So that's
Yeah.
what they're doing now, is figuring out how to balance everything, get those
Mhm.
skills, every skill, every dance piece, every piece of choreography as clean, be confident with them, and then know your cues so that you can go to them in those moments or those brief seconds of like,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
that just in case they pop in,
Yeah.
that your body is ready to respond.
Right. I like what you just said there, that what you have to be ready. You have to be ready because gymnastics, everybody, I feel like the world always knows in sports, in life, nothing seems to go to plan. There's always
Mhm.
some little thing, whether but it really just depends on how you handle those little inconveniences, those little minor mistakes, and don't allow them to become these major mistakes.
Yeah.
And I like also, I didn't even consider the athletes that were in Tokyo in the layer of just confidence that they gained, but also the mental toughness that they gained being over there. I like, to be honest, I just didn't even think about that. But that is, they created, we always say in NCAA, we always harp about the teams that create their own energy, I mean, imagine doing that at the Olympic Games. You feed off of the crowd. You do.
Yeah.
Not having that would create such a gosh, I don't know how to even describe what's going on in my head thinking about it, 'cause I know when I was an athlete, I fed off the crowd. I thrived in the big
Yeah.
arena setting, and, I remember walking into the Olympics and seeing more American flags than any other there was more American flags in that arena in '08 than any other country. And to be able, I mean, to walk into an arena, you've got a mask on, you're distancing yourself. That's a whole nother layer of mental toughness that I think maybe kind of is overlooked, because that's really hard. Like, that's really, really
Yeah.
hard.
That's huge. So they have that experience from in even in competition, and competition
Mhm.
at the highest level. And then they had the added stress of what happened to Simone, and they all had
Right.
to step up. So it's like at every turn they were thrown an obstacle to
Mhm.
overcome. So that increased their layer of resilience. All the other athletes, they went through this as well. Just because they weren't competing at the Olympic Games, they're
Right.
training. They're
Yeah.
all in the pipeline training for this moment. So they develop that kind of resilience as well. And I think what we're seeing too is a reemergence of just pure excitement about the opportunity to make an
Mhm.
Olympic team. And as I said, so only 5 are making the Olympic team and 4 alternates.
Right.
Okay, so there are many, many athletes at these trials that aren't going to make the team, but they can have an Olympic sized moment. That is so incredible. It's such a gift that they have to earn, and they earn it by going out there and doing their absolute best in that moment when it counts the most. That's the Olympics. So for
Mhm.
me, everybody has their own personal Olympics. Yes, there is the Olympic Games, but for me, everybody has their Olympic moment or their Olympic level of experience. And we're going to see that play out at these trials. And they're
Mhm.
feeling it in the preparation in these weeks as they figure out, what can I do every day to make myself 1/10 of a point better or
Right.
1% better each and every day. And also at the same time, find the ways that relieves their stress.
Mhm.
Because I remind everybody, stress and pressure, those are good things. They are only bad things when stress becomes distress and when pressure becomes a negative energy instead of a positive energy. So
Mhm.
it's the way that we use those things and we convert them. And remember, I said it's more than a privilege. Pressure is more than a privilege, it is a gift. So embrace that gift. It's the gift
Mhm.
that will keep on giving, and it will energize all of these athletes.
Beautifully said, like always. But I also I want you to be able to explain. So you have been to 3 Olympic trials.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Kathy,
we
first of
said
all,
night
wow.
and day difference, except I would say I like in a different universe, some of them
So
were.
Kathy's Olympic trial, so the lead up to the Olympic trials, everyone treats it differently. There are athletes right now who are continuously working on upgrading their routines. We know that there are a lot of athletes that are going to show up to Olympic trials with upgrades, whether that's a minor upgrade or a major upgrade. You're going to see upgrades. But the lead up, so this kind of this reset, like you said,
Mhm,
which I really love that definition for this time period because it really is so draining to be at a high. You just found out you qualified for the Olympic trials. I mean, you are on cloud 9 and you have to come down, but you can't come too far down. You can't just, lay on the floor.
mhm.
You
Yeah.
have to keep it's a really beautiful balance and a tricky balance, honestly, of keeping the momentum and energy high, but not too high because you have to continue to maintain.
Mhm. And as always, you learn from your mistakes too.
Mhm.
So what we saw at the two different classics. So
Yep.
go back to the buildup. At each classic, we saw less and less mistakes. And then
Mhm.
they were just now we're down to that point where there are flaws for them to fix, or maybe in the moment, like Suni
Mhm.
with the vault. That was a learning experience.
Yeah.
And that's the why we don't freak out with failures. That felt in that moment like that was the end. She said that,
Yeah.
but it's not. So what can you learn? What can you learn? What were you feeling in that moment? What can you do differently or better when faced with that exact scenario? Again, was it because that was, first event? Was it
Mhm.
maybe there's a way that you can prepare differently so that first event? I mean, that's the tricky thing too. I think
Right.
is rotation order and
Oh,
being
yeah.
comfortable with your rotation order and preparing. And that's what these gymnasts need to do in these weeks leading up. Know what
Yeah.
event they're going to start on.
Mhm.
I've heard Jess Graba talk about it. Like he sees the big picture. Oh my gosh, beautifully. Like
Yeah.
all the different things all at the same time, where he's trying to manage an extremely talented, successful
Right.
gymnast coming back from a significant illness. So you have to balance everything. And
Mhm.
that's figuring out, okay, they need to not just compete 4 events, 2 different days. You have to train leading up to that. You have to warm up or do the training, the podium training, then the
Yep.
warm ups, then the actual competitive routine, and be able to do it all in that few days. Okay, so that's a lot. And that's what they're figuring out, all of the ways that they can maximize, use their energy wisely, get their rest, get their
Mhm.
nutrition, get their bodies feeling really ready to take this on. And
Yeah.
then you've got the other layer. It's like, oh yeah, and we're trying to do all these skills perfectly.
Right. Don't forget that part. Don't forget
Yeah,
that
with
part.
judges
Minor detail.
watching
Minor
and tenths
detail.
of a point on the line, and but you can only do one thing at a time.
Right.
So stay in the moment.
Mhm. I think it's very easy to get caught up in all the things that you have to do, and that's where, and you and I talked about this a little earlier, is the relationship, the relationship from an athlete to a coach. It just seems like there is a huge like a very open communication from an outsider perspective. Of course, I don't know what actually goes on at the gym and everything, but when we see them on the competition stage, the communication from the athlete to the coach just seems like it is in this amazing spot. And I think that is why we are seeing so many athletes open up about maybe physical struggles that they're having, mental struggles. Their coach isn't just there to coach them on gymnastics. They're coaching them for life. I mean, they are truly acting as a life coach in some ways. And I think that's so beautiful, and I think that's, you're very lucky. The athletes out there that have that open communication, that is a very lucky bond, and very, don't take that for granted,
No,
bond.
because we've seen it all.
Right.
Back
Exactly.
in, I mean, we call it old school,
Mhm.
okay? And yet it continued to happen where
Mhm.
silencing a very young athlete is an easy thing to do. When you've
Yeah.
got a very young athlete, it's too easy to take advantage of this special little human being that is so talented and seemingly so mature as an elite
Mhm.
athlete, to just push them without listening
Yeah.
or getting any feedback from the athlete. And we have changed that, where this dialogue is a two-way street.
Right.
Yes, there is a, let's recognize it. There is a power dynamic. There is a
Mhm.
there is a power dynamic between a coach and an athlete. And when there's trust, that's okay, because you are
Mhm.
trusting your coach to have your best interests, to keep everything in mind, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your emotional, and
Mhm.
your gymnastics.
Yeah.
And don't lose sight of any one of them, because more and more, as we are finding out, mental health is at the center of everything, because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how great your body is, how great your talent is, how hard you'll work, if you're breaking down mentally
Yeah.
or not opening up and not feeling empowered or even
Mhm.
allowed to speak up when you're tired, when you're sick, when you're hurt, when you're
Mhm.
afraid,
Yeah.
when nerves are too much. And we are seeing, I think, more dialogue. We're seeing
Yeah.
more openness, and that's benefiting the athlete and our sport. We're finally, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, I'll speak on my personal experience. I feel very fortunate that all the coaches that I have had in my entire gymnastics career, I've always felt a sense of trust that I could have that open communication.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that, again, the weeks leading up to Olympic trials is so crucial, because if you are not feeling it, you're not feeling it. And
Yeah,
that is a great time to work on the basics. Like, there's always something to work on. So again, like you said, that open communication that we're seeing is really, it's refreshing. I personally find it extremely refreshing. I also think it helps the athletes long term. I mean,
yeah,
it really, I think that's what, maybe that is why we're seeing more and more athletes come back, more and more athletes that, people are looking at them as older. Yes, they are older in age, but I do think their minds are so sharp, and that communication is so good
yeah,
with their coaches, and that's why they're able to do it long term. I mean, they're able to
yeah.
stay an elite athlete and do elite gymnastics longer.
I used to say what we needed to do is for young gymnasts, because think about it. So a gymnast starts the sport often when they're toddlers
Yeah.
or children, young children. I
Mhm.
didn't start till I was 12, so I was older.
Oh,
But
wow.
so many gymnasts, I know, crazy, start as children. Now think about it. Think of the
Right.
human development
Oh, yeah.
of this person, this human being, going from childhood, young childhood, to
Mhm.
adolescence, to young teen, to older teen, to young adult. And all of that development has to take place while they're going to gym every day, sometimes 4 to 6 hours, depending on how many hours they're training.
Right.
And they're supposed to develop along the way. And that's what we did wrong for so long, for so many years
Yeah.
ago. And what we're beginning to change, because you have to understand child development if you're going to train children
Mhm.
and go and train them all the way through to adulthood, because they have to grow in both ways, gymnastically and in terms of human development.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we ruin their ability to even have relationships. And
Yeah.
most important, they need to be surrounded by adults that are showing them what responsible adult behavior looks and feels like.
Yeah.
Because that is, I mean, think about how many hours they spend in the gym. So
Too
they
many.
need to be able to feel that. Otherwise, you don't trust. And then they go, well, if I
Yeah.
don't trust them, who's going to trust me? And when am I allowed to speak up? When am I allowed to be part of the conversation, not just sit here and listen?
Right.
So we're finally learning that. And we're going to develop better human beings that go on and have healthy relationships with their significant others, with their parents, with their,
Yeah.
teammates. I mean, think about our relationships with our teammates, our sisters
Yeah.
that we have grown through the years.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. I completely agree, and again, I do think we're turning a new leaf, and I think you and I can both speak, from an outsider view. Again, we're not at any of the competitions on the floor. We don't necessarily know, but from an outsider view, especially you and I both living it
Hmm.
and being involved in it when it wasn't necessarily gold stars all around.
Yeah.
I think it is, and I do want you to talk about, again, your lead up to Olympic trials.
Hmm.
Being at 3 Olympic trials, Kathy, that is wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to have those different experiences,
Mhm.
especially, I mean, who would have known back then I'd be so involved with the sport still
Right?
all these
Yeah.
years later, um, much less in a position where I can help mentor young athletes coming up. So my very first Olympic trials, I was 16 and a half. So I actually was pretty young,
Gosh.
but I had only been doing elite gymnastics for 1 year. So I didn't start
Oh,
gymnastics till I was 12. Okay. I was 12 when I walked into a gym for the very first time. I did advanced compulsories for 3 meets,
mhm,
beginner, intermediate, advanced, made it to junior nationals. The very next year, I went elite, learned the elite compulsories,
mhm,
and then qualified at the regional level. Then we had zone. I was supposed to go to nationals. I ended up getting
mhm.
injured. They tried to petition me. They're like, we don't petition people we've never even heard of. So it's like nobody knew me.
Kathy's like, "I
Um, my
object."
coach tried, and he was like, well, okay. So then, anyways, I made it to national championships, and then we had a second called the Masters Elite Championships. It was almost like two different
Oh.
USA championships,
Oh,
then
cool.
trials, and I each one just made it. So I was getting better and better each
Mhm.
time. Go to Olympic trials, and I mean, if I could write a comedy series on this. First of all, my coach had some problems, had some personal problems. Most of the time, he was like 2 hours late to all my practices. Um, Fortunately, I had another. No, I. It's this is not just a podcast. Someday we'll dive into this. Somehow, magically, I
Uh-huh.
prepared for Olympic trials, but I was not prepared to make a team. I was not prepared to
Mm.
compete to make a team. I was prepared to get people's attention though. So I go
Yeah.
out there first day of competition. We did compulsory optional in 1 day.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
8 competitive routines in 1 day. So you did compulsories in the morning, optionals at night. After compulsories, I was almost dead last.
Oh
I had
gosh.
text errors. I had literally errors in my compulsory. Like I'm doing differently than them. I'm like, I think they're right. I'm wrong. So then we go out in optionals, and I was like top 6 in the optionals. So it pulled me up to I think 10th.
Oh my
And I remember
gosh.
Jackie Fye saying to me years later when she knew me, She goes, everybody goes, was she here yesterday? I mean, or this morning? Do we remember her? I'm like, so now I've moved up to 10th. Then we have to do compulsories again the next day. Okay. And I go, bloop, drop back down.
Mhm.
Um, just mainly because I was training in a bubble, so
Yeah.
my compulsories just were not there. So I dropped back down to like 15th, 18th, I don't know. Then we did optionals again the next night. And again, I was top 6 in the optionals, and it moved me up to, I was 12th. There was a tie for 10th, and 10 made it to training camp. So I was the next one. I just missed. And
Oh.
they tried to, the coaches, the Olympic coaches, didn't know me at all,
Mhm.
tried to petition me onto the squad so I could go to camp, because they
Yeah.
recognized, oh my God, she's so talented. Had she just had, I don't want to say, because my coaching, my gymnastics was really good because I had a phenomenal teacher in
Mhm.
gymnastics. He was a horrible organizer,
Yeah.
coach, slap. Like he just didn't,
Mm.
it was just a mess. It was messy, very, very messy. But of course they didn't allow it, but it was really cool. So I'm on the map now. And the very next year I became national champion, and won American Cup. Then I was national champion, then made the
Wow.
world championship team. So then it was an accelerated. So I had that experience of being
Mhm.
n- not expected to make the Olympic team,
Ooh,
except
been
I
there.
did. I expected it. I felt like I
Mm.
could. Now
Yeah.
looking back, no, I'm glad I didn't, because who would you take off that team? Who would you say shouldn't be on that team? Not a
Yeah.
single one of them. Okay. It worked the way it was supposed to. So
Mhm.
then 1980, we boycotted. And so but we had our Olympic trials, and we all approached it as if it was Olympic trials and we were making an Olympic team. That was
Mhm.
all our mindset. And certainly it was mine, because at that point, I'm almost 21. Okay.
Yeah.
So especially back then, that's tail end of your career. I've been the oldest for the last, I was the oldest my whole career. I
Yeah.
never was a young gymnast. So I had to approach it that way. This may be it. So
Yeah.
making an Olympic team is the ultimate goal. This is my Olympics. This is my moment. And
Mhm.
so I had a phenomenal trials after everybody thought I had retired. Everybody thought I had, oh no. And then I showed up and ended up second, at
Wow.
the Olympic trials, behind the little squirt Tracy Talavera. So sure she was a little like, she had missed making our world championship team because she was too young the year
Oh
before.
my gosh.
I know.
Oh, wow.
So she was first and I was second, youngest, oldest, first and second. It was
That's
cute.
fine.
I loved it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then we were on the 84 Olympic team together. So after 80 and the boycott, you talk about a reset,
Mhm.
because now, 4 years is a long time. As you know, you had 4 years
Oh,
between your
yeah.
two Olympic trials experiences, um, but you weren't between the ages of 21 and 25, and at a
That
time
is
when
true.
nobody was that age. And we didn't have NIL, college gymnastics. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't make money at all except coaching. So I coached. I literally had to coach, and I loved it. Don't get me,
Yeah.
I love, love, love to coach. But it put me in the gym for like 8, 10 hours a day,
Oh gosh.
because I
Yeah.
was training, then coaching, but I had to pay my way. So I had to pay bills. And that's the way we did it. So then 84 was sort of like, oh my gosh, I couldn't say for sure, oh, I'm going to go 4 more years. I'm going to take it a year at a
Yeah.
time. But very glad I did. I ended up with my very best world championship ever in 1983. But then here I am. So I can relate to the older gymnasts who are going to these
Mhm.
trials, because when you're trying to figure out what you can do, what's possible, can I
Yeah.
do this again? In a perfect world, 1983 would have been an Olympic year for me.
Yeah.
If I could have, made everything just perfect and write that script. But it's only 9 months later, and the Olympics are in Los Angeles, where I'm living and training. So it's like, you have to.
Right.
So hold on. And that was a completely different experience. And I was managing many different things, completely different emotions, mentality, life stress,
Mhm.
doing adulting, while trying to train and having lived away from home from the time I was 15, never went back. Never
Yeah.
imagined in a million years I'd be on the road, like, gymnast with wheels on her gym bag,
Mhm.
little hobo, gymnastics hobo. That's what we were. We were like,
I
I was not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were
I just
just,
imagining you with, like, a roller bag just walking into the gym like, "I brought all my things with me. Don't
no,
worry, I'm here."
oh, no. When I had to leave one place and go, it was painful,
Yeah.
because I was coaching a team in Atlanta I loved, but it was like,
Wow.
I'm also sliding into retirement
Mhm.
here. And if I don't move, and this is a cool thing about this generation, by the way, and you can talk to it because I think you got to experience this more, being closer to the athletes you competed with,
Mhm.
seeing them more,
Yeah.
whether it's at training camps or even training in the same gym. You and Sam
Yeah.
got to
Mhm.
train together. So until I moved out to Los Angeles and trained at Scats, where then I had other gymnasts training for the Olympic team, trying to make an Olympic team, we all trained together.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, what about your two Olympic trials? You're night and day different. So,
Well, Kathy, yeah, mine were they were very and I like what you said leading up to the '84 Olympics, you were dealing with adult stuff. I mean, and I don't know how you did it because, like, I'm adulting right now and I can hardly handle my life. So, adding like gymnastics and training to that would be extremely challenging. But I, mine were very night and day. But the biggest reason for them being so different is I was 16. Well, I hadn't even turned 16 yet. Right. Maybe I just turned 16 right before the Olympic trials, but I was counted out. 'Cause I
mhm,
had just had knee surgery months months before the Olympic trials, and it's a totally different focus from when I was training for the Olympics going into 2008, and then again, you talk about that reset for me was hard. It was really, really challenging, and I again, I'll talk about leading up to 2012, but leading up to 2008 was actually again, everyone thought that I wasn't gonna make it. Everyone counted me out because I just had knee sur there's no way I don't even know how I did it. I don't know, maybe back when I was, like, 15, 16, my body was just well, it definitely bounced back better than it does
mhm,
now, but I almost wonder, and I've thought about this so many times, if I wouldn't have been injured, like, if I wouldn't have had surgery, if I would have just been, would I have made it? Because I really don't think I don't think I would have trained as efficiently. I still would have trained hard, but I had a completely different training regimen leading up to 2008 Olympic trials than leading up to 2012 Olympic trials. I mean, you talk about I was trying to get back in 2008. I wasn't even at full competition at Olympic
mhm,
trials. I mean, I wasn't upgrading. I didn't have any upgrades in my back pocket, but I was just trying to get my skills back.
mhm,
And again, I truly, truly don't know if I would have made it if I wouldn't have been injured, which I know sounds really odd, but I was so strategic with my rehab that I was doing rehab every single day.
mhm,
I was landing on soft surfaces. We were do I mean, I would say in 2008, I was at my peak performance. Like, I mean, I was as strong as I'd ever been. I wasn't confident. I wasn't. I really struggled. I think I had a lot of mental struggles that, like you said, I
mhm,
kept them inside.
mhm.
Nobody kinda knew what was it was kinda like the saying, "Crying is for your pillow." Well,
Oh,
I mean,
well.
terrible. Crying is not for
Yes.
your pillow.
No.
Do not do that. But back then it really you know, you didn't show negative emotion. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yes.
even positive emotion, like happiness sometimes you didn't see a lot of. Like, I was a stone cold, like, I didn't really smile much. I didn't
Mhm.
such a drastic change to who I am now.
Yeah.
But again, leading up to the Olympic trials, which we don't need to talk about my 2008 Olympic trials because it was the worst meet of my life. I think I fell twice. I thought my life was over. Yeah, I was really going
Tell me
through it.
though, do you remember if your coach at the time
Mhm.
had a strategy, like where
100%.
where
100%.
you needed to
Yep.
be at your best to
Mhm.
show value, because that was during a time where it was selection.
Yep.
Okay, a
Yep.
lot of selection and trying to, put the pieces in place. So especially with the gymnasts that were like you,
Mhm.
maybe not a for sure on the
Yeah.
team. This is
Yeah.
trying to make a team by showing your value in the areas they need it.
100% because I was a really strong bar worker. I was a really strong bar worker, and my coach and I, we use that to my advantage. Not to mention when you have knee surgery, bars is the one thing you work. I mean, I worked probably 2 hours of bars every day. And there was a strategy. I think that's the easiest way to say it. I mean, there was a plan and there was a strategy that was in place as soon as I made the decision, I'm not giving up and I'm not calling it quits. I mean, that simple as that.
Yeah.
We had a big meeting, I'll never forget. We had a big imagine your coach, your parent. It was my coach, my mom and dad, my trainer that I adore, and he is the reason why I even made it to the Olympics. He's one of the main reasons for sure. Daryl, shout out.
Mhm.
And then my surgeon. We
Mhm.
are all having a meeting together. Mind you, I am 15 years old. Do
Yeah.
you think I want to sit in on a meeting with all of these adults? It wasn't a really fun time for me, but I think again going back to the communication, I had a lot of I mean, I was the one in control. I was the one in the
Yeah.
driver's seat. It was basically it came down to whether I wanted to do it or not. Not
Yeah.
whether my parents wanted to do it or not, not whether my coach wanted me to do it or not. It was, "Bridget, do you want to do this? If you want to." Collectively they came up with we had a strategy, we had a plan, competing these events at championships, competing these events at Olympic trials. We will petition onto what we had were camps, and I mean, it's crazy to think about that. I'm like, I do you think I had a clue what was going on? No,
Mm.
I did not. I
Yeah.
just did what I was told, and I just stuck with it. I mean, that was the biggest thing.
You know what you just reminded me of? So the two babies on our
Mhm,
84 Olympic team were
mhm.
15 years old, and they were my teammates at Scats
Oh,
when I first moved out there to train. So just imagine, I'm
mhm.
almost 9 years older than they are. Okay.
Amazing.
They were 15. They were the youngest Olympians, not just on the gymnastics team.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so the key to Michelle Dessert was our baby, the very youngest. And the year before the Olympics, she had a stress fracture. She was in a boot
Oh gosh.
for,
Yeah.
boy, the longest time. Well, guess what?
Mhm,
Her weakest event at the time was bars.
mhm.
Okay. So what do you do when you got a boot on?
You swing.
You swing, condition, swing,
Mhm.
condition. So guess what became her best event? Went from her weakest event and possibly an event. So, because back then we had to do all around. You
Yeah.
had to do all around, and you had compulsory and optional on every single event. Okay. So you couldn't have that. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm weak on bars. I don't
Mm.
have to compete.
Right.
No, you have to compete. So her weak event became her strongest. I will tell you this, it is why she made that Olympic team. Not for the bar routine. She was a
Mhm.
phenomenal gymnast, but this weak event could have kept her off the team. And
Yep.
instead, it became her strongest event, an event she should have made finals on at the Olympic Games. But you know how that goes.
Oh,
When
yeah.
super country and you also you have to do the strategy for team and all around first. So we had different lineups. So she ended up not making event finals.
Mhm.
And Pam Bilek. Okay, so she was great all around gymnast. She was the gymnast that she and Mary Lou Retton, when they were little juniors, they would go back and forth, and Pam would win, and Mary Lou would win.
Yeah.
Pam and Diane came in. We had the hot shot juniors. So that's who
Yeah.
my teammates were the hot shot juniors that came up right as I was just like getting my oldest. But it
Yeah.
was awesome because they inspired me, they pushed me, and I think I could help them, just
Yeah.
kind of as being mom. But Pam, so Pam was a phenomenal beam worker. She was our national champion on beam. And
Oh,
at the
wow.
Olympic Games, Michelle had led off at the on compulsory beam and was just nervous. Was
Mhm.
just like you could just. I'm 15 years old. Okay,
Yeah.
beam
Gosh.
compulsories are just they're just like so nerves can get to you.
Mhm.
So called a meeting and asked Pam, they're going to switch her, so Pam's now going to go first. And she said, whatever the team needs, I'll do it. And then it's like you realize she's our beam national champion.
Right.
Okay, we had phenomenal beam workers. Tracy Talavera, bronze medalist on beam from the world championships. I was a great beam worker, but we had a lot of
Mhm.
great beam workers. And he said, you realize going first, you're not going to make finals. She goes, I know. Whatever we need, I'll do it. She went up there with ice water in her veins,
Oh, that's
knocked
amazing.
out I mean, so you see these sacrifice,
Mhm.
these qualities
Yeah.
that these athletes are developing. And now with this selection process, they all, like you had a plan with your
Mhm.
coaches, how to make that Olympic team. All of them, they know the selection process.
Mhm.
They know where they fit in, where they hope to fit in on this Olympic team, where their value is, whether it's all around or just being able to do all four events at
Mhm.
any given time. That's huge. That's a superpower. And then where they've got weaknesses, like in your bar work, oh my God, game changer for the teams.
Yeah.
That's so important to selection. So that's the other layer that all these coaches and gymnasts are also focused on.
Mhm.
Because as much as Suni Lee, I mean, her
Yeah.
all around is coming together for
Right.
sure. And I think we're going to see a great all around competition from her at the trials. But what are the two events they really, really want to be at their very, very highest for that 3 up 3 count? Bars and beam. So you know that they have like you have to be smart,
Yeah.
you have to be strategic,
Mhm.
um, in order to make this team because the numbers are just they're finite and it's a small number. Um,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, I think too, I mean, not only do you have to I think everyone should have a plan. I think every athlete and coach should have a plan, but when you are wanting so badly to get out there and compete and because I think the most challenging thing for me being 15, leading up to the Olympics in '08, I was 15. I was just kind of breaking into the senior elite world. I was a alternate on the 2007 world team.
mhm.
I wasn't, again, like you said, I was definitely not a guarantee. I don't think I've ever been a guarantee in gymnastics for anything, but I was in the mix. I mean, I was in the mix and I was a name that was mentioned. And I think for me, what was so challenging was I was so afraid the plan wasn't going to work.
Oh,
I was so afraid the strategy that was put together and the pacing. I mean, you have to buy into every aspect of your training, of your recovery. Everything was just so precise and everything was so calculated when it came to even my meals. I mean, my meals, I was trying to get the maximum, protein vegetable because I needed my body to be healthy. I needed to recover. And the one thing I didn't do a good job of was like balancing my actual life, which I learned. I figured out after that. But
yeah.
I mean, that was without a doubt, I think that was my biggest kind of mental block it was always in the back of my head of like, what if this isn't worth it? You know,
Mhm.
what if I made a mistake of trying to come back from this injury this fast? Because we didn't know if it was,
Yeah.
you don't know. So I think you're seeing, like you said, you're just seeing so many athletes buy into a process and buy into this new dynamic of coming up with a plan and sticking with the plan. That is the biggest, I mean, come up with a plan collectively with your entire support team, whoever that is, and stick with it.
Mhm. You know, one thing I love about now
Mhm.
um, is the mindset that is changing, where it's not a one and done. It's not a, I only have one shot at
Yeah,
making an
for
Olympic
sure.
team. Because back in our years, for sure, the notion that you're going to be in multiple Olympic games, much less
Mhm.
multiple Olympic trials, that was so rare. I
Yeah.
mean, it really was, especially back in my day. And now you're seeing, and we're just opening up all these
Mhm.
ways for gymnasts to stay in the sport longer,
Right.
develop longer, be able to pace themselves. So the athletes that are quote unquote in the mix
Mhm.
to make this Olympic team, because we've kind of got sections of,
Yeah.
athletes that, if they're just their normal and what we've seen, they look like they're pretty set to
Mhm.
make this Olympic team. Then you've got a big group, not a big group, but several for just a couple of spots in there, and they're all just right there. And it's going to
Yeah.
be a matter of who's hot and is able
Yeah.
to compete consistently, feels great, puts it out there, and and then we're going to see who makes the team and makes those alternate spots or
Yeah.
reserve spots. But everybody is in the system. So it's
Yeah.
not like this is a lead up. These trial This is a lead up to next year and the next year and the next quad.
Mhm.
This isn't, oh, I
That's
missed
true.
and I'm done. No, because they've got college to go compete. They've seen that work
Mhm.
for a number of
Yeah.
athletes. So they see all these different ways to stay in the sport, stay at a high level, and still be able to rest their bodies, recover when they need
Mhm.
to, take time off if they need to, which was just
Yeah.
unheard of back in my day, to be able to take a break or whatever. Um, we're at a healthier place. That's why I feel less stress about these Olympic trials for these athletes. And yet at the
Right.
same time, when it happens, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat.
Of course.
Seriously, for all
Of
of these
course.
athletes, because you want them all to put out their best, and
Right.
and then let the chips fall.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I think back in my kind of era, it was very rare to see athletes compete in 2 Olympic games.
Mhm.
I mean, that is, and I think there's just so many elements as to why we're seeing more and more of it, and we don't need to get into all of them, but I do firmly believe that those athletes that are coming in and this is their 2nd Olympic trials, their 3rd Olympic, those athletes are paving the way
Yeah,
for the younger generation
yeah,
in an amazing way.
yeah. No, I mean, you can trace our history all the way back, really, from the 70s on, and each
Mhm.
generation, each quad, each Olympic team, and then the world championship teams in between paved the way,
Yeah.
made changes, made improvements,
Mhm.
spoke up,
Yeah.
demanded change, um, both culturally, in the way we train our athletes, the way we look at mental health, physical health, emotional health, communication.
All of it.
Like,
Yeah.
communication, that that is the biggest thing, to
Yeah.
not just sit back and wonder what's the
Mhm.
plan?
Yeah.
Am I
No, for
part of it?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel better about things. I feel less stress for these
Well,
athletes.
that's good. I hope the athletes feel less stress. I hope they're in that boat with you.
Well, I will say, we'll hold on to your nerves while I
Exactly. We'll absorb. We'll take some. You don't need it. Some nerves are good nerves. I actually used to get more nervous if I didn't feel nervous, which is really a mental, "Ooh, I don't wish that upon anybody." It is not a good place to be in when you're like, "Wait a second, why am I not nervous?" Well, now I'm nervous that I'm not
Yes.
nervous. And
Yeah.
then your brain is just yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're just seeing also a lightness to competing again, and, we talk so much on this podcast in general about finding joy and finding love, and it's very easy to fall out of love with gymnastics. It's very easy to fall out of love with the sport, and you're seeing more and more athletes, whether that's post elite, whether that's in elite, no matter where it is, you're just finding and you're seeing the joy and the love in their competing.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to share what I learned from one of my coaches
Mhm.
who, because I was always the kind to just, if it was a bad day,
Mhm.
I would just keep like pounding on myself, and keep pushing, keep like, and at one point, the coach came up to me and said he just wanted me to stop and
Yeah.
just go home. And that it feels like quitting. It feels
Yeah.
like failing. It feels like,
Mhm.
and he said, I understand, you know, he says, but it's not quitting. It's a
Right.
strategic retreat.
Oh, I like that.
So I shared that with my son when he was training
Mhm.
during those times. And that's probably what they've been feeling these last couple of weeks. And they will feel the next couple of weeks leading up to the Olympic trials is when is enough?
Mhm.
And you have to do that every day. Like you have to be able to recognize when you need to take not a step, it's not a step backwards. It's take
Mhm.
a breath, take a pause, listen to some input from your coach. Coach needs to listen to some input from the athlete so that you know how hard to push and when to back off,
Mhm.
when to push, when to rest, when to take a breath, when to, acknowledge, what, this is something I have to push through.
Mhm.
This is something I have to push through. And to be able to trust either the coach or the athlete, for them to trust each other to work that process out together and do it in a healthy way is one of the most important things that a coach and an athlete can do, so
Mhm.
that they feel like partners, and that they're checking each other, you
Yeah.
know, because it's a beautiful thing when you have that trust that you will allow somebody to push you to your limit,
Mhm.
but trust they will not push you over your limit, beyond, and vice
Yeah.
versa. When you can
Yeah.
trust the athlete to be honest with you. So, this is where the athlete has to be honest. Do I have more in the tank?
Mhm.
Am I just being, I don't know what the word is. I don't even want to use a word.
Yeah.
Check yourself. Yes, I've got more.
You
Let
heard
me,
it.
because you have to be able
Mhm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Gymnastics is hard. Elite sports is hard, and it's never going to get easier. You're only going to get better at doing hard things. So,
Yep. I mean, Kathy, I was going to ask if you have anything because we end every episode with you giving a piece of advice. And that was, first of all, that
yes.
was not just a piece of advice for athletes. I was sitting here listening, like, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, you're going to find
that was
out
amazing.
everything that you're doing right now in preparation for these Olympic trials and hopefully beyond
Hmm.
is also preparing you for life. Because I assure you, that when you start living life, there are going to be things that happen that are way harder than anything you ever did in the gym, because they involve other people. And when you
Hmm.
become a parent or the parent of a dog and two dogs, you learn to live with your heart outside of your body for the rest of
Hmm.
your life, because there's just other things that are more important. So, right now, and I think this is what I would say to many gymnasts at this stage in their career, in their life, except for Simone, who's found her love. She's married, she's got a life. He said, but for many, many gymnasts, gymnastics is your first love.
Hmm.
It's your first relationship. I know that sounds weird, but Oh my God. All my inspiration songs were love songs. How weird is that? It is. But because that's what it meant to me. That's how much I love gymnastics, that's how important the relationship I had with the sport was to me. So it's just interesting when you then have a relationship that you go, oh, so much better loving a person, being loved back by a person. Although my love of gymnastics at that point in my life was the sweetest love of all. It really was.
That wraps up today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. This is Flipping Out with Bridget Sloan, the Olympic special, and we will be dropping new episodes every week. So make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Let's make some good life choices out there, and don't forget to be awesome. Bye, guys.